You ever just want to go back and talk about something you watched as a kid, even if it's entirely irrelevant to anything going on right now? Yeah, I have that urge now. You know, edutainment is something I feel isn't really talked about that much in this community. Now, edutainment, or education-based entertainment, is something often associated with games, but a lot of shows can count as them too. For the most part, the reason why you don't see many videos on them is that most edutainment shows are aimed to preschool level kids, and there's not much to talk about because the target demographic is so young. Except for World Girl, that show is freaking hilarious and well written. Like, seriously, watch some episodes, they actually hold up.
Landlord stopped taking cheese as rent.
What are you saying?
Maybe we could grab a little of the gold.
Gold without transforming it into cheese? Well, then people would think I'm just some ordinary run-of-the-mill criminal.
That doesn't mean that you're not popular and successful in your own way.
Really? How am I successful?
You caught me by surprise.
But it wasn't just that. If you're about my age, you might remember an entire channel dedicated to edutainment media for children, Discovery Kids. Ah, my childhood, I loved you so. Yeah, this channel had a lot of shows trying to teach kids about stuff while also being entertaining, and it's a particular niche part of my childhood memories. Well, until the channel was freaking closed down and replaced with The Hub, aka the Hasbro channel, aka the My Little Pony network, the channel went down completely. So, you know, thanks for ruining everything. Well, okay, you did give us Dan versus, so it might have been worth it.
Okay, let's get those pants off.
I'm here about my face being all scratched.
Oh, don't worry. I'm not a doctor.
This is vandalism. The worst ism there is, if you don't count fascism. And I guess racism is pretty bad.
But I want to talk about one particular show that aired on it, which I think might be the best edutainment show ever. Well, okay, next to Mysteries of Alfred Hedgehog. That show was awesome.
There's a mystery in gnarly woods. Our sleuthing team has got the goods.
I made growing up with Cubo almost worth it. But in all seriousness, that's Grossology. A show that really wanted to push what makes an edutainment show and puts education right alongside a practical sci-fi action hero show. But the educational aspect of the show seems so off-putting. Talking and explaining about the grossest parts of our natural world is not going to appeal to a lot of viewers. But the magic of the show is it's not just about it, but has its own world that could easily fit in a comic or superhero show. Of two teenagers balancing their normal life and secret identities, working for an underground organization dedicated to solving crimes and fighting off supervillains who utilize these gross sciences in their evil schemes. It's such a weird concept that feels so out there for an edutainment show, but man, did they make the most of it. But yet it still does the educational aspects very well, and almost kinda makes the things they talk about feel less gross. I feel people might remember it from long ago and say, oh yeah, I saw that, but mostly just talk about how gross it is, but I think it's kinda doing it a disservice. It's one of the most out there edutainment shows that I think deserves a lot more recognition and respect for what it did. So let's get into the weird, wacky, and slimy world of Grossology. Now, technically the show wasn't made by Discovery, but instead by Nelvana, and aired on the Canadian network YTV. But in the US it was aired through Discovery Kids, since it was perfect for the network, so that's why I associated it as a Discovery Kids creation, and aired with it through the hub since January 2007 to July 2011. But it did rerun in Cubo since 2016, which also aired Mysteries with Alfred Hedgehog. You see, it's all connected. How did this show only get one season? Also, rest in peace, you gem of a network. Now, the show was loosely based on the Grossology book series by Sylvia Brandzai, which also spawned a video game spin-off that I'm sure many people remember. But they have absolutely nothing to do with each other. So it ran for about 2 seasons, unfortunately, with the second season not even airing on Discovery Kids, which kind of explains why I never saw the rest of the show originally. But back to the topic, the show centers around 2 teenager siblings, Ty and Abby Archer, who are part of the Bureau of Grossology, a secret organization dedicated to solving the grossest cases and crimes. And apparently the city is just plagued with supervillains who love to use that. Like, you thought living in Gotham would be tough, imagine living in this town, where a guy steals all the deodorant during a heat wave. They never really explain how or why the Bureau was created, but I like to believe that the feds got way too sick of the gross crap they had to deal with, and just made a whole new department so they didn't have to deal with it. So the Bureau really isn't as big as you think. There's Ty and Abby as the main agents, but there's Lab Rat and his actual lab rat Hermes. Lab Rat's the guy in the chair, inventor, researcher, Q stereotype guy, just the smart one in the group, largely to give exposition or the key to victory. But it's actually a really fun character, has a great personality, and there's even some characterization geared to him with his extreme agoraphobia, where he's terrified to go outside and loves staying in the lab all day. Though despite that, he still can suit up and fight plenty of times, so he's not just the guy in the chair. Hell, he's practically the honorary third member. Though honestly, this guy's science skills are insane. Like, not only can he make mechs and stuff, but like one episode he literally made the cure to aging. What the hell? Okay, the villain scheme managed to make an artificial aging concoction, but they never explained if this was just the antidote to the concoction, or if he just straight up made a faster up youth in his lab. If it's the latter, then Jesus Christ, dude, what are you doing? That can change the world! This always bothers me in stories like this, like some supervillain will make some de-aging machine that turn people to babies, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing this crap? You'll be known as the person who cured death. Why are you doing stupid things with it? It's never mentioned again. But enough of the tangent, there's also the director, who I guess runs this whole thing, but honestly, he really doesn't do much aside from complaining about some supervillain's crimes. He gets really whiny when things are gross because he can't stand gross things. I wonder why he's the director of the bureau in that case. Like, why did you even apply? I know jobs are hard to come by, but come on. Granted, he does often try to take all the credit when a case ends, so maybe he has it coming. I also want to briefly touch upon the main villains, starting with the first one, Insectiva. A lot of these villains, as I said, would cover a particular niche or on some gross aspect. Insectiva obviously covers insects, being a former entomologist who went rogue after seeing how insects were treated. Which, is this really news to you? You have to know most people don't like them. And then saw mutated herself into this thing. Though honestly, that's probably my favorite design, it's so good. And now it's hormonal control of entire legions of mutated insects to try and retake the earth for them. Yeah, pretty wild, but she is actually one of the more competent and dangerous foes with a lot of variety on how she utilizes insects. She also has a pretty fun personality and is one of my favorites.
Carnivorous plants digest prey to make up for lack of nutrients in poor quality soils.
Lack of nutrients in poor quality soils. Bah! Who asked you?
She also has a killer evil laugh. Then there's Slappy Joe. As the name suggests, he's really just one big gross dude. He kind of encompasses gross body elements like stink, sweat, stuff like that. He's not too much of a dangerous priority and is probably the least interesting villain in this show, but he's not too bad. His deal is that he freaking loves his own filth and wants to spread it and force it to others. Though funny how practically all of his episodes end with him getting clean somehow. And then there's Lance Boyle, this diminutive pimple guy. Now he's probably the most interesting villain since he's actually a former grossologist and wants revenge on the organization and the power to run it since he considers himself the best. He's the most competent villain, being a super genius and making all sorts of devices and concoctions for his schemes, and is probably the most threatening villain. His thing is usually more of bodily functions, like his first appearance was all about
Diarrhea.
But enough on the characters, I should get more into the show itself. Before I get into the show itself, I need to get through the intro because it changes. The first few episodes have a bunch of clips on the show edited together with some stylized animation. Super good heroic jazz with a bit of effects to kind of enforce that unnatural feeling. I can't get enough of it. But later on this season, we get a full new stylized animation for it. It's so awesome. And yeah, it reminds me so much of the Incredibles credits, but I love that too. And it's so cool to see something else like that. It's one of the things I associate most with this show, and I really want to acknowledge it. But the first episode, Queen for a Day, shows off a lot of the structure very quickly. Starts off with the library being attacked by an unknown assailant, as the next day Ty and Abby are in school, where Abby has to deal with the usual popular girl rival, Paige. A lot of Abby's arcs around school usually have her dealing with her in some way or form, but it doesn't take too much time in a lot of episodes. It's actually a nice contrast to Abby being more of a tomboy compared to Paige's girly girl, mean girl personality to show it off more. A bit of the subplot in the episode is the two having to work together on the dance committee and butting heads, but it's really not important. Soon they get a call from the director to investigate the library, which is all chewed up, as they soon uncover the source's giant termites, as they grab one to study before making their escape from the soldiers. Lab Rat takes the larva, calling it Timmy the Termite adorably, and explains termite hierarchical structure, and that these termites are hyper mutated by something and need to track down the queen to find out what's going on. Eventually finding it, of course, Insectiva. Though this is the first time they met, as Lab Rat explains their origin to them.
Is this my life story?
As Insectiva is shown to be able to generate her own termite pheromones that have mutants under her control to escape. But it does give them the idea to have Lab Rat create synthesized pheromones like trail pheromones to attract termites and queen distress pheromones. And just in time, as Insectiva's termite army has made a giant termite mound in the city and is sending out swarms to make new termite colonies all over the world which will destroy humanity. And using their pheromones to their advantage, they make it to Insectiva's lair, where they battle for control over the termites with their own pheromones. But Abby's runs out as Insectiva can keep just making more. But Ty came prepared for this and came with a backup, and sprayed Insectiva with a new pheromone, Ant Pheromone. And since ants and termites are natural enemies, it has made the entire nest turn on her. As Abby also called the swarmers back with the trail pheromone, so the threat is vanquished as Insectiva's arrested, as Lab Rat demutates all the termites. The director tries to take credit, but is of course too grossed out when called out on it. Actually, this is a really good episode and perfectly shows off what the show is about. It gives us an inciting incident which to do a check out, do some investigation to find out what's going on. Lab Rat gives some info on what the episode is about, as they follow clues to find out who's behind the whole scheme, as it gets them to smartly use their resources and knowledge to make a solution and stop the villains before they enact their scheme. It's a pretty good and reliable plot method and execution that you can find in other shows. Granted, a few episodes don't always follow this type of structure and can change, so it's not just formulaic. But you might have noticed that there was a clear educational aspect of the show, but it's executed very well that doesn't detract from the episode. The episode teaches you about termite hierarchy and how they use pheromones as well as others they didn't talk about, like how they digest food. But it's done so naturally that it works for the story. It doesn't stop to give you exposition like you're in school, it's directly tied to the episode. For pretty much every episode, the education is wrapped up in the villain scheme, and our heroes have to decipher it with their knowledge on the science behind it, and use it to defeat the villains at their own game. It actually gets you invested in learning and invites you to solve the mystery and case since you're engaged in the plot and want to know how it works. It's an aspect of the show that I think makes it the best work of edutainment, since it educates and entertains so seamlessly. I can't think of many other things that does it so seamlessly. Well, except for Mysteries with Alfred Hedgehog. It actually helps out a lot with handling the thematic gross elements of the show, since it actually explains how stuff like this happens. So with that, it can help you get over it and understand it more. But in other aspects of the show, I should talk more about Ty and Abby. I do really like how they're handled. They're siblings, but they never really bicker or get into that sibling rivalry, which is really good for these type of shows. Sometimes they do play off each other, but they never downright hate or get petty at each other. There's only one episode where that's kind of the case, but you can argue it's because Ty was enslaved by the villain. Ty is a bit more of the geekier, nerdy kid, loving science and books and sometimes tinkering and inventing with things. But it's not like Abby's not intelligent either. Ty is often in his own world and is pretty naive, but does have a reoccurring thing trying to get with his crush Naomi. Abby has more of the girl-like traits, but luckily is very headstrong, sassy, and confident in herself, never taking stuff lying down and speaking her mind. Like seriously, she means business. She's a bit more of a tomboy, but doesn't go all the way with it. She still has girlish interests like still wanting to get with boys. But I do love that Abby is still unapologetically the way she is, and is willing to grow stuff. It's actually a pretty good role model here for girls about her age. She's actually a really good character, and the two have great scenes and moments. Though, do they get paid for their work for the Bureau? Like, is this volunteer work? Do they get hours or something? It's never really explained. They also keep their identities a secret, which is a plot point for the next season. But come on, how the hell does no one recognize them? They literally just use green see-through visors. Like, not even their parents recognize them. There's also the animation. It's Canadian flash animation, which does have a bad reputation for looking cheap and off. Which other times, yeah, it really can be. But I think this show is some of the best uses of it. The show is super stylized with a lot of harsh lines and angles and almost abstract backgrounds, but not in that type of being too abstract that it's hard to make out what anything is. Combined with a lot of really good locations and shading, it can be pretty great to look at. We get a lot of good shots in the designs and makes an aesthetic and look all of its own. I actually really love it. Admittedly, some animation can seem kind of janky, but surprisingly a lot smoother than you'd think, with a lot of bursts of dynamic action shown together. But the show is very line-focused in the character design, and they love to add wrinkles and edges to faces that kind of just make them feel off. Is it just me? But I want to talk about a few other episodes in the first season and the lesser villains of the show. Starting with... Fartor. Yeah, they have an entire fart-based villain. Now, it's not done as bad as you think. First off, I actually like this guy's design, it's so weird yet unique. And his origin is that his older brother Dutch shoved him so much that he somehow freaking mutated and can only breathe in toxic air. I don't know how the hell it's possible or how his parents didn't notice their son was mutating into a gross blue blob.
Wow, issues.
You don't know the half of it.
But at least his rival did have a cool giant Mega Godzilla he was gonna get revenge with, even if, yeah, the episode is filled with flashlands as a plot point for it. Also, this guy gets like 2 double-length episodes about him where he also turns Tai into a toxic mutant, and then tries to turn the entire city to them with sulfur gas. And another in season 2 where he tries to terraform Earth with a methane planetoid somehow. At the very least, they don't use the farts as a crutch, and instead treat it more like he's trying to be able to live a life of normalcy in his condition at the cost of everyone else. Kinda like Mr. Freeze, but very stinky. In his defense, if you were forced to make a supervillain based off of farting, I think this was the best way to do it. I still really don't like him, and he's definitely my least favorite.
We'll give you anything. No more farts, please.
But it's okay, I should talk about the elephant in the room of this show's grossness and gross out humor. Gross out humor is known as one of the lowest brows of comedy, and so many people hate it for good reason and find it off-putting. Now, the show doesn't actually use it as much as you think. It's not like, ha, the character farts, that's a joke. At least not too often.
You weren't kidding about those termite farts.
I never kid about farts.
A lot of the show's humor is smarter than you think. A lot of said gross aspects are usually a part of the plot and establish the theme and conflict, and they're not just using it as a punchline. So at least it's better off there, but it still could be a lot for some people, so I understand it could turn people off from the show. Like, really, if you're one of those people, then I'd recommend just skipping all of his starring episodes. And even a lot of other episodes can have their moments, but that's just par for the course in a show called Grossology. It can even be a lot for me, like Frankenburger seriously makes me want to vomit. But it's not just used for humor, and they do make it educational. In fact, finding out how stuff like this works and happens, ironically makes it kinda less gross in a way. So it's the one show I give a pass for gross out and fart humor. Believe me, I do not give that out lightly, and they really push it sometimes, in this episode especially. The only other show I'll allow is Adventure Time because they did give us the only actually funny fart joke in history.
Be really quiet. Jake!
I thought it would be funny!
But luckily moving on, there's one episode I remember a lot as a kid, Owl Most Foul, which is kind of about Lab Rat, where after reluctantly going outside, he and Hermes are nearly killed by a massive barn owl, hiding his agoraphobia where he refuses to go out of the lab. Just as the high school is infested with pigeons. Then said barn owl attacks them, and it's soon revealed that the owl is actually a giant robot made by the school's custodial engineer Mr. Fowler, pretty obviously, who is sick of the pigeons and cleaning up after them, and using it to collect them and then freaking kill them in a pie based off a nursery rhyme. Like, talk about extra. But it does let Lab Rat overcome his fear to save them once Hermes is also threatened by him. One episode, the 3 main villains team up to get rid of the Bureau by having them fail their inspection. Which, wow, you really want to shut down this department? I know it's 4 guys, but you guys have goddamn supervillains here, it's not worth it. So now they have basically no resources and have to deal with this team up. It's a great episode. But also the villains are so egotistical and at each other's throats that they fight amongst each other for them. Also after that, Joe and Insectify have an intense hatred of Boyle that lasts through the show. I love A New Leaf. It's one of my favorites where Abby gets trapped in a massive greenhouse by her new villain, Saracenia, who looks like a poison ivy fused with Ursula and plans to overrun the city with giant mutant carnivorous plants. And surprisingly, Abby has to team up with Insectify to get out of the place and stop her. It's a fun team up I love. Other villains are Darko Crevasse, this Ozzy Osbourne looking weirdo. I keep messing up their name and call them Donnie Darko, who is a self-proclaimed creature of the night and seeks to engulf the town in darkness. Honestly, probably the least gross villain in the show and more like some Batman guy. Also, there's maybe the dumbest villain ever made, Dr. Cornelius Colon. Like seriously, I need to tell you this guy's plan, it's amazing. So this guy got bullied as a kid since his last name is Colon, even though I'm pretty sure most kids that age don't actually know what a colon is.
This episode was brought to you by the Society for Healthy Colons. Yay, colons!
And so he decided to become a proctologist anyway, and then somehow made a giant sentient living colon complete with giant mutant tapeworms in the school, which I don't even know why it doesn't work there. And he plans to use it to grow and cover the entire world in it so everyone has to live in a colon. Oh my god, that is the actual dumbest, stupidest supervillain plan I've ever heard in my life. I love it. But there's one character I'm pretty sure is the most popular in the show, Chester, aka Kid Rot. So there's this new emo kid, Chester, last name presumably McBadbat, who arrives right when a weird rot epidemic has hit school, causing things to quickly decompose and die off. Eventually, Ty and Abby find out it's traced to Chester, who reveals that he had a grand plan to save the world by finding a way to stop food from rotting, but his experiment backfired and gave him a strange parasite in his body that overwhelms him and activates a rotting superpower where he creates a decomposing effect on whatever it touches, hence why he's accidentally causing the school's issues. Chester and Abby also have a hint of romance building between them. However, at the prospect of being removed, the parasite then takes over Chester, giving a new design, voice, and identity as Kid Rot. I guess he's a music fan.
Stick around and rot a while.
As Kid Rot now is determined to go on a rotting spree. However, after narrowly escaping the decomposing attack, it's found that the residue from his rotting effect is incredible and downright magical fertilizer. And after tracking him down, Chester briefly comes back, knowing that he has technically achieved what he's wanted and could save the world. But Kid Rot takes over for good this time and escapes, promising to rot the world. And we get the payoff pretty soon with King of Rottingham Forest. We have to investigate the forest rotting in a natural heat wave going undercover as camp counselors. And Paige is there too for some reason. But it's soon revealed it was Kid Rot fully overriding Chester, and his parasite vault to now completely rot away everything he touches. It makes it completely dead. No fertilization. And his abilities really feel like he could single-handedly destroy the world and is probably their most powerful villain by themselves. Kid Rot also obsesses over Abby, saying he's doing this for her as he rots the entire mountainside, threatening to kill the camp with a sludge wave, as Ty's barely able to stop him, creating a makeshift blockade which stops and seemingly drowns him in his own rot, and he's presumed dead. But no, last moment show he's still alive and kicking. And it's like really setting up his return, like of course he's gonna come back. Yeah, no, he's never seen him mentioned again through the entirety of season 2, with only being in the intro in a hologram one episode. Like, why would you set this up if you're not gonna pay it off? What gives? But yeah, I can never see why he's so popular. He's one of the most intimidating and powerful villains in the show, and has a unique relationship with the two, especially Abby. Plus the obvious fact that he's just drenched with that emo bad boy, no you can't save me, I got a demon inside, energy that fandoms love. I think he's one of the show's best antagonists, and agree that they really dropped the ball for not finishing his arc. But that's the highlights of season 1. Let's move on to season 2 where things get a bit more interesting. Starting off, and holy crap, this intro is literal perfection! I already said the first intro was incredible, but oh my god, it's so good! The animation's so much smoother, the designs and silhouettes so much more detailed, and there's more timing in the audio, the composition's incredible, it's so damn good! It even shows virtually every villain in one shot, and it looks so great, like come on! Like, is it a stretch to say this is one of the best intros ever? Like, I absolutely love it! The Incredibles' influence is off the charts. Please look it up, it deserves more attention. But onto the show itself, not too much has changed. Of course we get more episodes and a whole new batch of villains coming in for it as well. The season opener is about giant spiders, which tricks you to think it's actually Insectiva.
Next to a human in the day room, we discuss the weather. Good, Insectiva, good.
But no, Insectiva hates arachnids, and the show makes an important distinction. It's actually Insectiva's random sister named Arachnidia, who also somehow mutated herself and proclaims her love of arachnids and have them take over. And like the natural world, they're enemies and hate each other. Also ends with a giant mutant kaiju fight between a tarantula and mega mantis, it's awesome. Another one where alligators invade the sewers, making people paranoid of them in their toilets, but it was all a scheme from Boyle.
The alligators are
Robots?
Of course, you dupes! Real alligators can't survive in the sewers!
Yeah, unless you live in Florida, then that's a very real possibility. Also, one that baffles me is an episode where somehow Sloppy Joe managed to open up an incredibly successful restaurant chain which dominates the entire city.
I'm a respectable businessman now. A restaurateur, if you will.
And all throughout I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You've literally peaked here. People would dream to be in your position, you're probably loaded. Like he's doing this just so that people would throw out his huge meal proportion so he has trash to play with. Like, why are you doing that? Just buy a dump or something, you've won already. Oh well, at least he freaking dies for his hubris. Also, the chain still exists after. Does he still own it, or did he lose ownership for being a literal dirty, rotten criminal? There's also a Christmas special where the duo suspect Joe doing something suspicious with giving out fruitcake, but it turns out, no, he's not actually doing anything villainous, he just legitimately loves Christmas and wants to make people happy. That's amazing. You know, villains who hate Christmas are so overdone. Villains who love Christmas, yeah, that's peak. Only thing better are villains who are completely neutral on Christmas. But Boyle actually sabotages it, since he does hate Christmas.
Lance Boyle!
So yeah, another team up here, it's great. Joe even helps Abby get over her Christmas hatred, it's so nice.
You like me. You really like me.
Come on, Santa. You've got a lot of little kids to make happy.
Also, Insectiva opens a spa. Okay, seriously, how are these well-known criminals allowed to run enterprises and no one cares? Like, do you really want to go to a spa run by a lady who looks like this? But actually ends up befriending Abby's mom since they're both entomologists and gets invited to dinner. But it's actually great since Insectiva doesn't know who Abby actually is, somehow, but she knows how to get under her skin.
There's about a few insects, right?
Insects are a vital part of our world's ecosystem, young lady.
Must rid yourself of notions of good and evil and replace them with notions of bug good and bug evil.
Though also, since if you remember the reason Kara, yeah, that's her real name, got into villainy because she hated how entomologists treated insects, it was kind of doomed from the start. Still great that they did this. But yeah, it goes to show you, do not try and befriend supervillains, especially if you're actively against their thing. Speaking of Joe and Insectiva, the two actually do pair up near the end of the show. Okay, I guess. I wonder if they got a season 3 this would be elaborated on. Also weird that they say no one ever loved them before, but I mean, Joe, I get it, he's pretty gross and disgusting, but Insectiva was a perfectly attractive woman for the off-screen mutation. Did her bug thing just really turn people off? Also, I will give props to a technically non-canon episode where Darko accidentally resurrects road-killed animals as zombies, where the show does point out that in an actual zombie apocalypse where the dead rise, that maggots would deal with the problems within a week. Yeah, that's right. Grossology after disrespecting an entire horror subgenre. One of my favorites comes in later in the season, Fangs a Lot, where a reoccurring kind of scam artist, Professor Skinner, uses genetic manipulation to make the perfect pet, the Slither Buddy, which stays small and cute forever.
I played with nature, now you can play with them!
But with reports of monsters being found, it's soon uncovered that all the Slither Buddies eventually will molt and mutate into giant hyper-aggressive dinosaur-like beings ravenous for the next meal. It's like that part in American Godzilla, but actually good. Also, there's no way there were no casualties. People 100% got eaten alive in this. There should be a lot more anyway.
My cutie woody little baby sharky.
He deserved that. Also, there's unexplained giant killer worms controlled by this weird old coot. Like, okay, how the hell do these things exist? Were they mutated? Were they natural? Does Insectiva count worms as insects? Something like this happens in a really boring episode of the first season. There's just giant hagfish for no reason. What gives? Also, they never actually stop him, and it's implied he's killed a lot of people and probably keep doing it, so good job, heroes. But more importantly, we finally get an origin episode in New Recruits, where a while ago, Ty and Abby saved their tour group by traversing through a cave tunnel full of noxious guano, which got the attention of the director and the Bureau, who introduced them to the team, including Lance Boyle before he became a gross pimple monster man. And he was a handsome, skilled, and intelligent senior agent. However, while he was training them, he sabotaged them and planned to kill them, since he saw through the director's plan that he was training them to replace him, since he knew that Boyle wanted the director position and he was better at it. Which isn't really wrong. But they solve it, and Ty accidentally messed up his prototype shrink ray he fires, which shrunk his body and swelled the pimple in his head to make him who he is now. Really nice that they did give us an origin. Also, it seems that Fortor finally got a resolution to the series finale, which actually goes to space somehow. Like really, everyone has rockets now? We're at the race to stop him from getting to Uranus, of course. Which, okay, they have no right to get to that quick. Like, what the hell is Lab Rat doing to make faster than light travel? So Fortor plans to throw one of the small moons of Uranus filled with methane to collide with Earth to terraform the world so we can survive. Which, okay, this is maybe the most over-the-top episode in the series. Like, this makes absolutely no sense and is impossible to throw a planet from Uranus to Earth and that it would cause a KT-level extinction, but just accept it. And I'm not going to tell you how they solve it since I actually want you to see the show. But in a brilliant ending and possibly concluding his story arc, it gets caught by the moon's gravity, but ends up terraforming it for him, as Fortor finds a place where he can breathe. Which means if we did get a season 3, he probably wouldn't show up again, so that would have been nice.
Fartor's left the planet, we're free!
But okay, I should end this talking about the main story arc of the season. So there's this little puke at school named Roger Pink Eye. Yeah, this guy looks like he should have been in that one Invader Zim scene.
Ever heard of Pink Eye? Yeah, Pinky has it pretty bad right now.
I will say it's one of those things that make me particularly squeamish, like, jeez.
Pink Eye, get a life, Pink Eye. I can't help that I have bacterial conjunctivitis!
But Roger suspicious that Ty and Abby are actually the Grossologists dealing with all the criminals. No, I gave it away. Honestly, this episode shows just how freaking bad they are at keeping their identities. Also, Pink Eye has so much black mold in his house that it literally becomes a sentient, hostile monster. Roger was willing to essentially sacrifice the two to it to prove that they are the Grossologists, which, wow dude. Like, if you were wrong, you pretty much killed them. He makes another mold monster to prove it, and they later have to admit it, with Roger saying that he wants to join the Bureau too. Honestly, he might have a point. I mean, it's just like 4 guys and only 2 active agents. Would a gross intern be that bad? But I guess Roger inhaled so much black mold he's dying as he gets unconscious as Ty and Abby set up that he hallucinated the whole thing, with the director posing as a Grossologist instead. But Pink Eye is not convinced as he still swears to uncover their secret. And it's a passive thing in the next few episodes, trying to find out more about their secret and prove that they're a Grossologist. Until it takes a bigger twist during Pussed Off, someone focusing on an acne-making device that Lance Boyle actually didn't make but wants to utilize. Also, they do show off effectively the Arkham of the world, where we see all the incarcerated criminals. I do love it when these shows do this to have high-tech prisons for their super criminals, since it does always beg the question. But eventually, Boyle does get caught in a trap, but while the two are distracted, Roger out of nowhere takes him. So the episode ends with Pink Eye having Boyle hostage. I do love how despite him being an evil super genius, he can't open a pet carrier, which gets carried over to the next plot episode, the brilliantly named Pink Eye and the Brain, where Ty and Abby get a makeshift distress call from Boyle asking to save them. Wait, why don't they immediately recognize he's held in Roger's room? They were literally there multiple times. As Roger demands that they tell them everything they know about Ty and Abby, but Boyle refuses out of spite, and easily withstands all of Roger's weird tortures. Curious on why he doesn't tell them, considering he hates Ty and Abby and will probably ruin them. Actually, why hasn't he told any of the other villains or attacked their home? It's the main reason why heroes keep secret identities, as Roger's left with no other choice.
Please! You gotta tell me about Ty and Abby's secrets! Please, please!
But luckily, Roger is so damn pathetic that it gets Boyle to finally tell him what he knows.
A top secret organization dedicated to solving gross crimes.
Okay, how are they secret? They literally interact with the public daily, and again, there's only 4 members! And then the episode randomly turns into a clip show. However, after hearing episodes and episodes of his incredible defeats, Roger just thinks Boyle is a really crappy villain if he's beaten so many times. But even though the agreement was that he let them go once he tells the secret, Pink Eye gets the idea to hand it to Ty and Abby and act like he caught them so he can join. Roger even catches them in the act, identifying them in their Grossologist outfits. Again, how does this fool anyone? But they tell him to piss off as he swears revenge. He goes back complaining that he would make a great Grossologist. And he probably would. I mean, he made a mold monster and apparently genetically modified rats. This kid just has some good skills. Again, there's 4 of you. But Boyle plays into it, stroking his ego that he deserves to be one, as he promises he can help him get in if he opens the cage. But they finally find out who kidnapped Boyle. Again, you were in his freaking house.
You put the squeeze on Boyle. That's how we figured out that we're Grossologists.
No, it's just super obvious. But Roger's covered his tracks so the two have nothing to pin on him. But he does show he's now working with Boyle, who's planning his revenge, which sets up the 2-part finale to the story arc, Pink Eye's Revenge. Starting in the science fair where the two are suspicious, but it's shown that Roger's project was actually cloning, showing it off with the cloned rat amazing everyone. Okay, seriously, this kid can clone, he should be on the team. But tracking down an unusual infestation of rats on a solo mission, Ty thinks he saw Abby before they somehow got away, and then the actual Abby shows up. But of course, Roger's behind the rats, cloning them, but also someone made a rat clone of Abby, huh? And it was due to Boyle's help that he got to know how to do it, even if the rat hybridization was an accident. But Boyle considers the animalistic instinct and agility as an improvement, even having mental control over the rat underlings. Ty brings some DNA evidence of rat, Abby, rabies, but they aren't sure, not knowing how the DNA can have Abby and rat parts to it. But the director thinks the DNA means Abby was involved in the crime, with Ty reluctantly admitting it since he kept seeing her. But Abby says Roger must be trying to frame her, but Abby's suspended because of it. But at school, Roger frames Abby again for sending the rats through the facility, while also fighting them off, giving Roger the acclaim he wanted. Abby's suspicious, saying Pink Eye must have cloned her, which everyone finds ridiculous, as the director fires her and replaces them with Roger. Abby breaks into Roger's place, where are his parents? And finds Boyle, who admits the scheme and shows off Rabby to capture her. Meanwhile, as Roger's getting orientated, they hear the sound of
Grosser! What is that?
It's
a tactical nuke from the sound of it.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Roger's immediately sent out to deal with Sloppy Joe doing his thing, and Roger pretty immediately fails. Again, the intercept was probably the better option, but Rabby easily defeats them for him, which wasn't the plan, taking the glory, which forces the director to hire her back at a higher position. Wait, so did he just admit he hired them as a grossologist? Again, what's with their secret identity? But Boyle's using it as a plan to take over the Bureau like he's always wanted, leading us to our final episode of the arc. Roger's trying to train himself, giving us Kid Rot's only cameo in this season, what gives? But he again fails to stop the villains and makes the director look bad, as Rabby goes in to fire Roger. Man, he's just all for firing indiscriminately now. So Roger goes to Boyle's hideout to tell him what gives, but Boyle obviously captures him too, taking his satisfaction that he's in a cage this time. Boyle gets Rabby to defeat all the other villains by intentionally luring them out, even Insectivore was literally just going golfing. I do love it when you see supervillains in their downtime, but this allows the director to get humiliated, putting Rabby in charge of the whole thing, who fires the rest of them, as Boyle is now in control of the entire Bureau and can use resources to take over the city. Of course, Ty and Lab Rat don't know what's up with her, but they somehow bring a DNA scanner in Ty's basement to prove that Abby is a rat-human hybrid. But the real Abby and Roger somehow get out, primarily using Roger's hot sauce used to torture Boyle before, to corrode the locks. I guess Lego Island was right. The other guys try to take the Bureau back, but Rabby and Boyle catch them. But real Abby and Roger come too, with Abby duking out with her clone.
Or is she becoming less Abby and more ratty?
I don't know, it's what I've been calling her. Roger's caught and looks like Boyle's about to actually kill him. Oh god, that was when they shoot corrosive acid, where Hermes saves them and enraged tackles and takes down Boyle for good. Meanwhile, Rabby's actually somehow becoming more rabid and feral in the fight. I kinda wish this was foreshadowed more, with apparently the rat DNA taking over, as Roger lures them with a sticky cheesy man in his first episode to trap them in a containment chamber. Also, this somehow, and I really do mean somehow, fully transform her into a giant rat. And technically she's still the director, making her the giant rat that makes all the rules. But Roger gets knocked out, we're still remembering what happened, which I find complete BS because this happened for like days, come on. But the end still hints that he's starting to remember what happened. So yeah, that was Grossology's one true story arc. Honestly, it's pretty decent. You never expect a show like this to tell a storyline, but I'm glad it did. An interesting premise with Roger trying to expose her to, and pretty much getting what he's wanted, only for the show's arguably greatest villain to use to get what he's always wanted, to keep adding new twists and turns to it, and making the stakes feel high with a lot of drama with a lot of the characters at each other's throats. I just wish this had more permanent consequences, but hell, it's like the show was that serialized anyway. And yeah, honestly, I hope it does show you why I think it's the best show of edutainment. I said all of this, and I barely even brought up the educational aspect because the show wasn't just trying to do that. It's not trying to be a science lesson all the time. It wanted to be a good show first, and tell all sorts of stories, but also perfectly integrates its lessons as well. It's the best type of education that makes you want to learn. I really can't give my props enough. It's an action sci-fi show that integrates what it wants to tell you in its narrative, framing the villain's plans using whatever it's about, and getting you invested as you naturally learn about it without feeling the show talks down to you. Like, how many educational shows actually did it? How many shows naturally weave it to their narrative and get you invested? Even a similar action superhero style edutainment show like Word Girl didn't exactly perfectly weave its education to the narrative. I promise you, if you watch this show, you're gonna learn things you never really knew before. And not only that, but I gotta give credit to how well the show executed itself. Like, really think about it. This show could have been the most lowbrow, disgusting crap ever. But it didn't use its grossness as a crutch. They made the most with it, turning what honestly seems like an idea dead on arrival, but making it a super fun sci-fi action show, practically developing its own superhero universe. It's so much more creative and fun with its ideas and plots than it frankly had any right to be. And the villains and plot they create deserve some credit. And again, Dr. Colin is the greatest villain ever made. You kinda don't know what to expect in any episode, and it's so damn fun sometimes. It makes a world and identity all its own, and I really gotta applaud it for that. I actually really wish it got that third season because I would love to know what else they would add. What other scientific things they're gonna get into, what new characters and villains and dynamics can be made, and see if they can finally pay off the story arcs they introduced. Characters are great, the animation is surprisingly good, and the writing's a lot better than you'd think. I just had a lot of fun revisiting this show, and I found it better than I remembered. I'm sure a lot of people remember it long ago, but never thought that much about it, and I actually recommend you check it out for yourself. It's actually really easy, the episodes are literally uploaded to YouTube, you can check them out right now. Though, just be aware of what you're getting into. It's called Grossology for a reason. Make sure you got the stomach for it. But hey, I still stand that it is the best show in edutainment. Oh, who am I kidding? It's still Mysteries with Outfit Hedgehog. Play the theme!
Bugs.
Bugs, huh?
Yes, bugs. They're everywhere. In the ground, in the trees, inside every wall, inside every baby.
Creepy.
No, not creepy. Beautiful. Our world is garbage. Bugs are a light in the garbage. What is your favorite bug?
Are worms bugs?
Yes. Yes, worms are such wonderful bugs.
Oh my god.
Such wonderful, beautiful bugs.